Good afternoon, welcome everyone. Thanks again for joining us today for our third interactive webinar in our series, How to Build a Successful Allied Health Practice. So today's session will cover the link between defining your service and achieving the vision of the purposeful practice. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Charles Broadfoot and I'm one of the Professional Development Officers with the PHN. I just wanted to begin the session today by acknowledging the First Peoples and traditional custodians of all the lands that we're meeting on, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from a Wabbi country. So today's session is being recorded. The recording has started and the recording and the slides will become available in our education library within the next 24 hours. So if you can keep your microphone on mute during the presentation today, but if you do have a question, I encourage you to either use the raise hand icon. So this is a little reactions button. You'll either see this in the top right hand corner of your screen, or it might be in a little toolbar down the bottom in the middle. So if you click that, I'll invite you to unmute and ask your question. But alternatively, you can just type your questions in the chat box and I'll read these out for Marcus. So to make this session more interactive, we are using Slido polls throughout the session. So if you're familiar with our previous sessions, exact same process. We would love you to participate in these and know that your answers are anonymous. So I recommend doing this now in preparation. So you should see on your screen there is a QR code. So quite simply, if you want to scan that QR code, it'll take you, it may ask you to enter your name and then it will take you to a screen where I'll launch the polls. Alternatively, you can just go to slido.com, so that's SLIDO, and it'll ask you for an event code. For today, it is AH3, so stands for Allied Health, and the number 3. I'll also, in a minute, just post the direct link to Slido in the chat box. We also will be launching an evaluation survey through Slido through the same link. If you could please complete this, we really appreciate any feedback that you can provide. And I'll need you to fill this one out if you would like a certificate of attendance for today. So it's now my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Marcus Croak. So Marcus is our presenter for the whole series, and he's been a business coach since 2005. This was a natural progression from owning businesses and being employed across many areas, and these include retail, importing, wholesale, transport and education. So Marcus has evolved his skills to coaching numerous business owners to become successful leaders of high performance teams. So that's all from me. If you do have any questions for me, just pop them in the chat, but I'll hand over to you, Marcus, to start the presentation.
Thanks very much, Charles. Lovely to be here with you again, and thanks very much for the introduction, folks. So just to point out, we've got the series of 5 workshops that are taking place, seminars that are taking place. We've done 2, so this is number 3. The other 2 are available in the resource centre. You can find them in there, or you might bother Charles and email him if you don't have the links. He emails out afterwards with the links to them, and I don't know whether you put all of them in there or not. These webinars all stand alone in what they're here to provide, but they also, I aim to link them together so that you can see, like today, having the service practice turning purpose into profit. We talked about purpose before, we talked about cash flow before, and hopefully I'm managing to link up all of those things together along the way. Today we're covering these things, the KPIs, key performance indicators. We're having our first look at prems and proms. We won't go too deeply into those today. In reality, we're not going to go very deep into those at all because that's whole other sessions, and I know you've done work on those. It's relating that back to profitability and what we're doing. The next session that we're doing, we'll go into those again to see how you stand out. It's called the standout practice, so we'll be going into those again. We're looking at the profit for purpose formula overview. So that's what I refer to as the 5 ways. So the drivers of profitability in your business. It's a simplified version of drivers, and say, well, then you branch out to get more and more specific. And we're going to look at the first 3 elements of the 5 ways that you can drive profit in your business today. So pretty full load in the things that we're doing today. As Charles said, please, I really like people asking questions along the way. We're pretty full with our schedule today, but I do like questions coming up, and I am going to ask you for some feedback along the way, because what we've got in here, it's going to be much better if you've got your thoughts going on and feeding back to everybody else about what we're measuring when it comes to KPIs. I thought I'd throw in at the start here, we do have downloads. There's downloads from previous sessions as well, and you can email my assistant, Casey. What's happened there? I've got something come up on the screen. Casey Van Zelst is my assistant. We call her the Magic Elf for any of the downloads that we have. She can also let you know about events and offers that we have. If you want an appointment with me, you're welcome to do that. Pop on the phone for 10 or 20 minutes to run through a few things. Not a problem. Just email me, and that's much easier than Calendly and all those things. We can just sort it out. Or you can phone me. I'll drop that phone number in there. It was my birthday yesterday, so you missed a webinar yesterday on Profit First, which is what we did last time. But I made this offer to people out there because I've got my own book. You can see it there, The Tradie's Guide to Instant Cash Flow. It is perfectly appropriate for all businesses. It just happened to be written about a case study of one particular business. So it's a true story about their business and the cash flow strategies that we put in place to take them from struggling with money and headaches and stress and I don't know where all the money is to a multi-million-dollar business. Now, the multi-million-dollar business doesn't make any difference, by the way. That's a good point to make for our measurement that's coming up. That can be a key performance indicator, but the important thing is the profitability and the cash that comes out of it. These people now own 6 investment properties, their house, go on family holidays, all those sorts of things. Now, the reason I put a special on it was because yesterday I turned 62. So, and I know I don't, I look good for 70, but I turned 62. So therefore, $6.20 for the book and $6.20 postage within Australia. So that actually cost me money to do that, but that's fine because then I get to send you something for my birthday. So good special out there, and I'll stick the link to that in the comments as we go along. Again, don't worry that it's about tradies, it still works. Hopefully you've got your Slido going. When I find the chat, I'll put that link in there. So today's about KPIs, what you can measure, you can manage. And often we say if you measure something, simply measuring it means that you can increase it, or if you want to decrease it by 10%, because our focus is there. When you measure and manage, you will manage it because it's being measured, and then with that measurement will come improvements from it. We refer to these things key performance indicators in the business. Now, I'm going to ask you your first Slido question, and then we're going to come back. When you get these slides, you'll see that I'm actually doing this. I'm skipping one and then coming back to one when you get the PDF, but that doesn't matter. So key performance indicators, we're going to discuss them. So here's the first Slido question. What are the key measurements for your business? So you can scan the code, that should come up there. And you can enter a few words there. We're trying to, this is going to build a word cloud to see what people say is what they measure. What else have we got? Occupancy. It's an interesting one. I'd love to know who's put occupancy down. Returning and ongoing clients. The number of returning and ongoing clients, is it? You'll see that comes up in the profit formula. Referrals, yeah, cool. Good one. What else we got? Capacity, yeah, love it. Dollars per hour, yep. Clinic, I'm interested what that means, clinic. Clinical. Capacity utilization, beautiful. Weekly revenue, number of future appointments. Cool, okay. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So key performance indicators, you can keep putting them in. Rates of your hourly rate. I wonder what that means. Please feel free, come off or stick it in the chat what you mean by some of those things, because they're really interesting. Here's my take. I get asked a lot, what's this about? Number one for me, key performance indicators, not key activity indicators. So there are both things. One is about performance. Performance to me is what's the outcome that you get. And that first word on there is key. So is it key? Is it letting us know, if I have a look at that, is that actually an indication of how things are going? And that can vary from business to business, from organization to organization. Just because it's an indicator for you doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good indicator for someone else. So typically in business, we look at things like revenue, and that's a great example of, it can be a fantastic indicator for me in my business of how my business is going, but it's not, that amount of money might not be reliable for you in your business. So just this morning I was saying, maybe I said it to you guys, a $3 million revenue business might sound like a great business and everybody wants to grow, but it's a matter of how much profit they're getting out of it. I've coached businesses with revenue of $3 million that are making far more than businesses with revenue of $30 million. So that's, one of those things. It's what works for you. Often I say to business owners, if you were to walk into another business like yours, how would you be able to tell whether it was a good business or not? That's a good way to think about it. If you just walked in, what would you be looking at in there? So because it's key as well, I said there's not 7,000. I started coaching, the year I started coaching, I worked with a guy. He was a coach and he'd come from PepsiCo, and he'd also worked for Caltex and whatever. So Caltex, KFC, all of those. And he would talk about the fact that they looked at 3 measurements in the business. They were their key performance indicators. If one of them went wrong, then they were measuring 3,000 other things. So I always say your key performance indicators are a few things that let you know how you're going. What's the scoreboard that tells you? So they're often quantitative in the way they go about their measurements. So you put down some for you. My phone's shut, so they've gone. Patience, however you refer to them, profitability, appointments. Did anybody write down profit? So revenue is a perfectly good measure of how an organization, a business is going, if you know the rest of the numbers. If you're just looking at revenue, it's a mistake people make. We went over this in the when we looked at profitability and the financial mastery. If you don't know the rest of the numbers, the gross margin, the expenses, those things, then it's not a good measure because you haven't done the maths on it working out. But if you know the numbers, the rest of the numbers, then the revenue will tell you where you're going to end up. How many appointments you've got booked in, the efficiency. Somebody wrote down here, like utilization. We'll talk about a couple of those in a moment. Occupancy, so hotels, look at occupancy. Planes, look at occupancy. Simply what's the number? How many people are in seats on the plane is their number one KPI. That tells them how because everything else should flow from that. There's the maths of all of that should work out. Mechanics, if you're in a dealership, they'll look at productivity and efficiency. So they will have, if you go to get your oil change done on your car, they will have already said, the dealer will say that that's a half-hour job, for instance. So they're looking at, is it being done within the half hour that we're allowed for? That's being efficient. And then productive, basically how many hours are we doing a day? So top mechanics, they would expect to actually be billing out like 120% of what's allowed for in the day. They expect them to get through the half-hour job in, let's say, 20 minutes. And so therefore they get through more jobs during the day. So 2 things. So think about that for your own organization. Doctors are one of those areas. That's going to come up as we talk about prems and proms and how you stand out from the crowd in the next one. Billable hours. Gross profit. So that's going to affect you more in health organizations if you're paying contractors, just because of the way we set up the financials in the business. But even if you're not, you've still got to be looking at the productivity and occupancy. So how do you know in your business what it is that is happening? And you've got to make a profit. So one of the points that I'll keep stressing is that the business has to make a profit. It's still a business. You're being busy doing something, so that makes it a busyness. And you've got to make a profit in order to do what you want to do out there. If you're going broke, then you're not going to be able to help the people that you want to help. Typical business ones are simply revenue, gross profit, net profit that comes out of it. Then we have a look at, we've done that. If you think about your prems and proms, so I don't know if all of the organisations are using these ideas, and I find them very interesting because whilst we end up with some quantitative measures, they're also based on some qualitative information. You know, some of that's subjective to me. One of the things that happens here, and what I'm talking about with the key performance indicators, a lot of the time we're looking at the financial drivers that go behind that. How is it helping that? With these, we are coming up with some of the reports talking about people's experience of waiting times, how they're feeling. So that subjective nature comes into it. So you've got to look at those and how that's affecting your business. And I find that really important for our next session when we're looking at how do you stand out from the crowd. What are the experiences of the patient and the outcomes that come out of there? You're used to in health measuring outcomes. So they're good, they're actually a really good example of key performance indicators there when you look at outcomes. We used to use things, a key performance indicator, well, a key indicator in the old days was BMI. My understanding, not used so much nowadays. When I was a much younger man and joined the police force, you had to have a certain BMI. I think they then threw that out. You had to be a certain height, certain weight, BMI, all those sorts of things came into it. But that was actually a key indicator. If you didn't meet that one, then you weren't going to get in. So that's, if you want to ask something about prems and proms, obviously it's not something I deal with all the time personally with organisations. It's a measure in there. So yeah, anyway, please feel free to ask along the way. Names, interesting one, a book that you can read for next time if you want to, a great older book called Selling the Invisible by Harry Beckwith. One of the things Harry talks about in there, again, this is a standout from the crowd part, is about the dress of particular research into vets who gets sued, in doctors that get sued and how they deal with patients. There are some key performances in there. I ran a after-school tuition business on the Central Coast, and my chief measurement that I wanted when I looked at children coming out of the classroom, so we coached in groups there, I wanted to see those kids come out with a smile on their face. So if you like, that's a bit like an experience measurement that we're looking at there. They weren't putting a number at the end on how they found it, but I wanted to see that they wandered out with a smile. It's a bit Maslow's hierarchy type stuff, because if they came out happy, they were going to come back next time. So there's it depends what you measure. We talk about measurement and being valid and reliable in research. So you've got to make it valid. What are you trying to measure? Is that actually telling us the information that we want that's useful? And reliable, can you transfer it from situation to situation? So that for me is just an example of, it's not all about the financials, and it can be hard to track back, but there are things about the experience of your patients that are really important to making this work along the way. Okay, so let's move on. How are we going? Understanding your numbers. So we need to understand the numbers. We need to understand the KPIs. Their numbers, typically, they've got some sort of measurement around them, even if it's an experience. Like I've said with the prems and proms, you tend to have numbers put on them. Then we need to have the numbers that are meaningful to us so we can make better business decisions. So here's your second Slido question. What tracking software are you using? Nothing? I imagine most people have some sort of accounting software in their business now. Do you have industry software only, like industry-specific software? Lots of different industry-specific software. It mightn't just be health software. It might be specific to your part of health. Do you have a combination of accounting and industry software that you use so that you can get some measurements out of it? What do you use? I use... Come back here. Accounting only and industry software. Cool. So then the question that comes up in that is, when you look at KPIs, can you easily extract your KPIs from it? Because that's what you want to do. And when we look at the 5 methods that come up in the profit formula, you'll see, can you actually get that information out of there? 0 is pretty good now because you can actually look at that and get your invoice, number of invoices and average dollar sale from the invoices, which we're going to talk about soon. Counting only 25%. So that can make it harder. Hopefully the industry software has some other measurement for you in it. Before we get into the profit, I just want to point out an idea about, well, how do we get profit and purpose going together? The first thing I've said, well, we can't deliver on our purpose unless we're making the money, unless we're having the money come through to be able to deliver it. If you're going broke, you're going to go out of business and can't help it. One of the best examples I ever came across was Johnson & Johnson. Has anybody ever heard of the Tylenol scares going all the way back to 1982? And stick your hand up or something so we can see it, or just type in the chat yes, and something in the chat. Oh, Gina, sorry, I didn't have the chat open because I got my slides there. Thanks I had a happy birthday. How occupied, with patients a practitioner is versus how many time slots in the day. Yeah, that's a really, really good measure, Elizabeth, of occupancy. And it's really, really important. Gina, no, tell me more. I can't even remember the question. Okay. So Johnson & Johnson. So in 1982, Johnson & Johnson are the producers of Tylenol. So Tylenol is the big name in the United States, where we have Panadol in Australia. In 1982, people started dying. And what they found was that some Tylenol bottles of the extra strength Tylenol had capsules removed and been injected with cyanide. There happened to be 3 people from the one family died before they figured it out. I was in the Chicago area and they pretty quickly, like within a week, got onto it and found it got the link of the Tylenol. So what happened? 7 people dead just in the extra strength, not the regular. Johnson & Johnson were informed that they legally didn't have to do anything about that. They had to do some recalls, but not everything. What they did was they recalled 31 million boxes, whatever you like, they were plastic lid things, I think, of Tylenol. It's the thing that brought about the safety we have around getting lids off and sealing nowadays because of these deaths. So what they did, their board decided that to meet their purpose, they've got a thing called the Credo. It is literally carved in stone outside their headquarters. And they have this Credo, and they went back to that and said, if we're going to live up to our purpose, to our Credo, then we must recall not only the extra, but to be safe, we will recall all the regular strength Tylenol as well. Capsules is what it was. We will recall all of them to live up to our Credo. And here's the first part of their Credo. It's a full page. We believe our first responsibility is to the doctors, nurses, and patients, to mothers and fathers, and all others who use our products and services. In meeting their needs, everything we do must be of high quality. So in reading just that first section, they went, we don't have a choice if we're going to live up to that other than to do that recall. And I found that really powerful in helping people understand, helping me understand what you need to do, how you have to answer the questions around that. So everything that we do in producing this profitability, you can look back and say, is that helping me get to fulfilling my purpose? That's my point with that. So the purpose, I think purpose was our first webinar. You can go back and look at that. Where we're up to in terms of my system that I use, so I'm part of Action Coach. You might see, I don't know if you can see it on there. I've actually got Action Coach Global Trainer shirt on today. I'm part of the Action Coach organization, which is the world's largest business coaching organization. And we've got 6 steps. Mastery is what we've been doing, which is like financial mastery and destination mastery. There are 4 sections. So understanding the financials in the business, what makes them tick. Now we're up to niche. Niche is about having a profitable enterprise. We say no price competition. And it's where the 5 ways fits in, the as I'm calling it for this, the profit for purpose formula. The profit for purpose formula has this idea, this thing that you can use the same chassis to build different vehicles, which is what happens. And we say it's the most powerful business secret ever learned. Now, I've owned a Camry and I've owned that model Lexus that's on there. Lexus is a company owned by Toyota, although a separate company, and it stands for Luxury Export to the United States. So they wanted to compete in that market. But I can tell you that many of the parts on my Lexus were just labeled Toyota because they were the same Toyota parts. And I also know that brakes that I had on that car, my son worked for a brake company, and we could swap them out with Toyota parts. They were just pretty tricky to find what the Toyota part was, but exactly the same. It was stamped with Lexus and cost more money. But it is a different car. Great seats, best seats I've ever had in a car. The doors go thud. They have the safety features, a bit like Mercedes. The safety features come up years earlier in that model than they do the models that follow. But the basis of the car is the same thing, just like originally VW and Porsche. So you can take that chassis, which is what we're saying the profit formula is the chassis of the business, the backbone of the business, and then build on it whatever you want. It's take the principles and apply it to your organization. So let's have a look. Let's put some numbers in and show what they are. So you'll see on here, there are words written in blue and there's words written in red. So customers, revenue, and profit are what people can normally talk about. Their endpoints, though, that's why they've got the equal sign before them. You end up with customers after you've generated some leads, as we say. So that'll just be inquiries in health normally. It's inquiries coming in. Unless you're out there actually marketing, that's why we refer to it as a lead. And the conversion rate is about how many people have inquired and how many people have actually booked an appointment with you to turn them into customers. So I'm using our normal business language in here, even though we talk about, again, inquiries and customers would turn into patients. People can normally quote their revenue. Often people can't quote their profit, whether that's cash profit or profit on their profit and loss, which is the theoretical taxable profit of the business. So this is how it goes. It's the chronological life story of the patient journey, if you like. It's very helpful. The patient makes an inquiry. They then get converted. They turn into a customer or a patient. They come back time and time again. They spend money every time they're with you. That's average dollar sale, which generates your revenue. From that, you work out what margin, how much do you make out of every interaction with them, which leads to your profit. So a simplified version, but what it's there to show is what actually drives the profitability. If we put some numbers into that, let's say you have 4,000 inquiries for a year. Now you can do this over any period, doesn't matter. 4,000 inquiries for the year and a conversion rate of 25%. So that means if 12 people make an inquiry with you, that one in 4 will become a patient. So 25% become a patient. In this case, you end up with 1,000 patients or customers for the year. If they buy from you twice a year, and every time they buy from you, they spend $100. Now, again, these are simple mathematical mean averages. Some people might come to you once and never see them again. Some people might come to you 7 times a year or 700 times a year. But the math, if we're just using simple numbers, 2. Average dollar sale, how much do they spend every time they're with you? Again, some people spend $1, some people spend $1,000. Mathematical mean $100 is a simple measurement in there. If they do that in this business, and get a revenue of about $200,000. So we're just making simple numbers. It would be appropriate for a small solo practitioner probably. And let's say you have a profit margin of 25%, which gives you a overall profit of $50,000 in the business. Now, what we do with this is say, so now we know our drivers are the things in blue. We're not being concerned with customers in terms of how do we produce them. What we're concerned with is how do we produce more leads? How do we produce a higher conversion rate? So we've got one of the things that you can get from me today. So I use Action Coach. They've got documented over 340 different strategies to make this work. There's 80 something in the number of leads at the moment. So if we work with a few of those and put them in place, let's get back to here. Let's say we were able to put either do better with some of your lead generation strategies. Now that could be a strategic alliance. If you're a podiatrist and you get referred by a doctor, it could be that you're able to do something there to build that alliance to get more. It could be if you're able to do some advertising. I know you've got to be careful about that, but if you're able to do some advertising, it could be social media, whatever. If we're able to improve that or put some new things in place, just a few, that's one of the big points here, just a few things. Can we get a 10% increase? We say, well, most people think, yeah, we can. So that would take your number of inquiries to 4,400. If we did the same thing with conversion rate, so when somebody rings up and inquires with you, can we put a few things in place to change it from 1 in 4, or instead of 3 out of 12, maybe we can make it 4 out of 12 or 5 out of 12. So just that little bit of increase. Again, if we change it by 10%, it's a 10% increase on 25% to 27.5, not 35%. That will give you now 1,210 customers or patients, whoever you refer to them. If you then have a look at the number of transactions, if we're able to increase that from 2 a year to just 2.2, again on average, maybe some people go from 2 to 4, some people go from 7 to 20, whatever it happens to be. And every time they come to you, instead of spending $100, they spend $110 on average. What do we end up with? Well, through those, just looking at how do I make a 10% increase in each area, I'm now at $292,000. If I then look at my profit margin, how much am I making out of everything that takes place? Now we mainly work on your gross margin because fixed expenses by definition are meant to be fixed, although they're not really fixed. We can do some work on those to look at what's essential, non-essential, what can be reduced. Then we end up with 80,525.5 for the year. So little increases. This is the point, little increases. Same thing happens in health. It's not always a massive thing that you do, is it? If you put a number of little things together, then it makes it work. If you do that, you end up with that. Now, here's the thing. That's a 46% increase in revenue, 61% increase in profits. This is about doing the smart work in business, not the hard work in business. I'll give you some examples. Here's the question for you. Extrapolate this to your own business or your own organization. But even so, if you had an extra $30,000 in profit or more, what would you do with it? Go on a cruise, buy a new car. These are all things that my clients have actually done. Go to Lake Louise in Canada, go on a family holiday, buy investment properties, just build up your cash. Don't just build up your cash, please go and do something with it. If you've got that extra money, would you employ more staff? Give yourself some more time off. If you did that and employed more staff, what would you do if you got 300 hours back? Spend time with important people, work on the business more. What's it going to be that you do? We started calling this smart work. Everyone talks about working smarter. I work with a cleaner who's now traveling around Australia. So he's in his early 30s with his wife, 3 young kids, and they decided we ended up setting a time, 1st of April last year, where they wanted to have the business run under management and they would take off around Australia. So we didn't work harder, we just put in smart things like how do we make more money out of what we do. I work with a tyre retailer, and same thing, he said to me, my guys work hard enough, I don't need them working harder, but can we improve the profitability? And for him, he run the business for 15 years. He didn't really want to run it that much more. So he had to get his mojo back, but doing simple things and just working smart. Interesting thing that comes out of that, those examples have ended up giving better service to their clients than they were when they were working hard. So they're making more money and getting better service. So let's have a look at some of them. Margin, the amount made from the transaction. So if somebody comes into my shop and buys a big cookie from me for $10 and I've bought it for $6, I've made $4 out of it. That's my margin, or 40%. So here's one of the big questions that comes up for me in margin. Are appointments completed within the allocated time? So I know you've put down in some of the things there about that very thing, and I talked about productivity and efficiency. Now this can really get hidden. I'm going to put down yes for me. Yes, 67%. That's really interesting. That's great. No, 33%. So here's where they can get hidden if they're not, particularly if you've got people who are working on a salary, so that the amount of money they're earning is fixed. The fact that they're working over, now we've got 50-50, the fact that they're working over is not necessarily going to show up in your profitability. Example of mine, the last business I was involved in, we sold commercial touchscreens. I've mentioned that before. We employed our tech manager who was on a fixed salary. Now, we would do jobs where certainly if we allocated direct costs back to him, that would have cost us money. He would work lots of hours. He was on a salary, so he didn't get paid more than that. But that again didn't get allocated back to jobs. And wasn't reflected in the profitability of the business because we paid for it. So you've got to be really, really careful of that because it's easy for it to be hidden. And it's so common, I'll tell you, amongst tradies as well. People doing quotes at night, invoices at night, all this sort of stuff. The business is, if you can't pay somebody to be doing that work and still making a profit, the business, in fact, really isn't profitable, okay? You need to be able to pay somebody a market rate to be doing that work. So what are the top 3? I'm going to open up the chat. I've got the chat open now, so you can put in there for me, what are your top 3 margin strategies in your business? See what I've got written down. Number 1 thing that people say is put your price up. Now, what you have to do is what I was just talking about a bit, go back to the other financial mastery and understand what's the break even in your business. How much money do you need to generate every year, every quarter, every month, every week, every hour probably for each person in the business? Because there's very few people that are 100% productive. Most businesses are running, we like to benchmark at about 80% billable time. Lots of businesses run at 50%. So are you actually making enough money out of what you're charging to not only deliver the break even, but deliver the profit that needs to be made? No, tell me more. Aim for 80% occupancy. Great. Price increase, yeah. So you got to look at that, Gina. And it's really key. Like, people get really stuck on price increases. It's one of the big things. Like, we have problems mentally about sales and stuff. So you've got to make the money to stay in business and give yourself a return. See more patients. So see more patients isn't a margin strategy. Okay, it is one thing you can do. Don't get me wrong. Just within the technicality of where I'm defining it, manage expenses tightly. Yeah. So the next thing you can do, put your price up, is manage expenses. One of the ways is stop giving away free stuff. So discounts. The tyre guy that I worked with, one of the things he did, somebody had come in, oh yeah, no, it's only been a few minutes, it's okay. That might sound fantastic. Motor Traders Association, where they're licensed, it's a bit like healthcare. Imagine if somebody pops in to see you and you're giving them medical advice and it's not recorded, and then they walk out and drop dead. Someone's not going to be happy. So mechanics are the same. You go into a mechanic and they do something for free, they touch your car, all of a sudden they're responsible. The MTA gives them big warnings about that. So you've got to be really, really careful about it. And it's like time management. Those little things can add up. You know, having, if you're like me, 4 cups of coffee a day, you know, that's 20 minutes to half an hour. Now, I'm not saying not doing that. It's just understanding those little things add up. You're there to add in other things and they add up. So you start giving away stuff for free. That's like discounting. Actually discounting your products, if you're not making a lot of money on something, you know, you can give a 10% discount. I think we had that as one of the handouts before. If you've got a low profit margin and you're giving what you think is a small discount, that's pure profit coming off the top. You could be halving your profit even though you're only giving away 10% of the price of the item that's going out. So be really, really careful about that. And then, was it Gina said? Yeah, manage your expenses. So analyze. So that's what we do in Profit First. Know your cash is what we talk about. So it's not just knowing where all the cash is. It's looking at, well, how much is that costing us? What's essential? What's not essential? We've seen people getting rid of Netflix lately. And Effie on the Today Show said, well, part of that might be that people are looking, we're being told we're going to get interest rate increases. So they're getting rid of those little bits, because you add up your $10 here, your $15 here. There, again, it can add up to a lot of money. So analyze the expenses and get rid of them. Margin expenses are the best. So, because they go straight to the bottom line. Other things there, I tell you, I worked with another mechanic, a high performance dyno tuner. So he tuned rally cars and cars that race drags at Eastern Creek and things. And he did a lot of customization. We worked out that as he used those 10-centimeter bits of wire that were expensive wire, he was still going through reels of wire. And it's like, oh, I really need to take that into account. It could be little bits of bandage, or, you know, the band-aids. Everyone tends to forget about the little bits and pieces. And then that productivity and efficiency is really important. Even if it's a salaried person, you need to get that back, and you need to get them, in my opinion, their quality of life back. Room utilisation, incredibly important. Gina, we changed from BB to payments in full. Sorry, I don't understand BB.
I think it's bulk billing.
Oh, bulk, sorry. Of course. You're not shooting patients with a BB gun. Engage payments in stage rehab. Yeah, okay. Bulk billing versus payment rebate. Yeah, cool. So payment up front, I work with a signed person, like just terms and conditions of how people work with you. Getting money up front is like what I call the two-putt. It's it just gets you ahead of the game so much more. So you've got a few there, you know, if they're not in place, go back and look at them. They need to be looked at all the time. Average store sale, the amount generated from the transaction. So this is the McDonald's, do you want fries with that? Okay. There's a question for you again, if you don't mind, on the QR code. Do you have, it's very simple, yes, no. Same thing. Do you have a list of other services and products that add to your service or product? So the examples there are, now if I go down to Bunnings to buy paint, then they should have a list of things there for me. Do you need a drop sheet? Do you need a brush? Do you need some cleanup stuff? Do you need rags? Do you need all of these other things? Now, even if you go to McDonald's, and we won't argue about the health benefits of McDonald's, but if their purpose is to feed people, to make sure that people aren't hungry anymore, when you're there, then if they're to fit with their purpose, they need to ask you if you've got enough food and drink. Okay. My example of that, I can't remember if I told this before, is if I go to the pharmacy, if the pharmacy's job is to give me products that help me overcome illness, but also prevent illness, if I go in there because, well, my granddaughter nowadays has I want to get some Dimedon, if they're to fulfill their purpose, they really need to ask me, do I have a measuring cup for that Dimedon? Because otherwise I'm going to go home and go, well, I don't have a measuring cup, but I've got this glass, and pour it into there. And it's like, well, how much is 10 mils? You know, they really need to ask me to deliver on the idea that they are giving me the best products and services to suit my needs. So, you know, again, what did we end up with on here? 86%, fantastic. So here's the thing, are you offering them? So like I said, if you're fulfilling your purpose, you are actually letting people know about them. So my tyre guy, one of the things for him, he's in a cold part of the country, is he would talk to people about their batteries, but he would make up his mind. He'd say to them, your battery, I think, has got 3 months left. It will be okay. Now, here's my take on that, what I said to him, but it's not your decision. Your job as the expert is to tell them, to certainly diagnose, and to let them know what might occur, but then it's up to them, because they might say, you know, why you don't know that it's going to be right for 3 months, you think that, because we don't actually know. So your job is to say to them, I think it'll be right for 3 months. However, I don't know that that's going to be the case. If there's a cold snap tonight, maybe the battery won't work tomorrow. Up to you. Here's the cost of a new one. Would you like to put one in or not? And the thing for, you know, for people to be reassured that their cars were going to be all right, that they weren't going to have that problem, he had an increase in battery sales. So good for him. You know, he's also giving the customer peace of mind that their car is going to be okay. And maybe some of those would have failed, you know, but it wasn't, he hated the salesy thing, but he's like, okay, I get it. I'll do that. I'll give them the choice. So, Elizabeth's gone, so no good saying bye maybe now. Nice to have you here, Elizabeth. So what are some of the other things you got there? Can people type in there? What are the other things you do for average dollar sale? Do you have a list? So you're saying you're selling them, which is great, or offering them, which is absolutely fantastic. So if you don't, the 14% that don't, think about what you have. My experience has been that there is no business where their customers know all the services or products offered by that business. That even comes down to mine, which is a really, really simple business. And they go, oh, I didn't know you did that. Yes, I can do training on that. So have a think about that. One of the things that comes up for there, I was just talking about the tyre guy, and what he said to people was, we wrote a script for him. Look, this is, let's put the thinking about it, around it, and then let's build in, well, what do you need to say to people? And that was really important for him because he struggled with the idea of it being salesy and, you know, it's not just about making money. And go, well, mate, that's making money you can think of as the benefit of it. We're here to help people, to make sure their cars don't break down. So, you know, when he got that, again, we just helped him build in how he was going to go about saying that. Kylie, one additional product we can start to add or build on that. Absolutely. Private flu vaccines. It's an interesting one. Yeah, let's just think about it and think about how is that going to help my patient, my customers? Is it fulfilling the purpose of the business? Am I not fulfilling it if I don't do it? Is always my question. Okay, next one here, looking at time, a number of transactions. So you'll note, by the way, from where we started with the customer journey, number of leads, conversion rate, we've actually gone to margin as the first one. So the very last thing, because that's the easy work. It doesn't cost you money to put that in place. Normally very easy to do. We really then go, well, this was the other way around in the formula that you had. What I typically do, we go to conversion rate second, but we're going to deal with that next time. When people are with you, they're already spending money. That's the time when we have them to see if there's something else that would be useful for them. So that's why we do average dollar sale. And then number of transactions, repeat business, because they've already come to see you. Is it necessary for them to come back again? Now, I don't have a Slido for you here. Joint food and natural analgesics for Rachel. Yeah, cool, great thing. So there's lots of things we can add on. Just keep thinking, what do I do to fulfill my purpose here? Am I really helping my patients? Am I not doing as much as I can if I don't offer them these other things that they can have? I mean, I wouldn't go giving them a list of 300 things to choose from whilst they're seeing you. That will probably just confuse them. Actually, a lesson from fuel stations same guy that was with KFC, when they put specials around, if they told the people at the counter taking the money, if they gave them a list of specials to talk about, it wouldn't happen. And they worked out they just had to come back to one and go, it's like, do you want fries with that? Not choose one of these 7 different things. It's like you just ask people about this one product. It's hard for the people who are offering it, and it's hard for us receiving it because our minds just get too confused and we can't make up our mind and go, don't worry about it. In fact, I don't even want what I came in for. So number of transactions. Simplest one here, health plan. If they're coming to see you, what's the health plan? So do they, would it be better for them to be coming back again? We saw probably the first time I came across it in allied health was, a chiropractor 20 years ago who'd done his study in the States. So they, when you went there, they booked you in for 6 or 12 appointments straight away. So what we do with hairdressers, teach them to book people in for the next appointment. So part of their hair care plan is that we've already got that appointment built in. Now, you've got to think, well, is it part of the health plan for this, what people are presenting for, or is it part of the longer term plan? In hairdressers, we found that they might have been booking people in like 8 weeks away, and that would reduce the average again. People weren't booking in, so they might have come, on average about every 8 weeks, and by putting a process in place, it brought the average down to 6 weeks. But if you work that out over the year, people are coming more often during the year, maybe 8 times instead of 6 for the year. So you get a couple of extra transactions out of them. So that's how, again, you fill your seats or, fill your rooms, whatever it happens to be. And again, you've got to believe that it's the right thing to do for them. Should people be having a 3-month follow-up? So that plan of when people are coming to visit you is important. And again, that's that question of, is this the best thing for the patient? Should I be following up with them? Is it the best thing for the patient to have to think about booking in, or can we do that for them and take that load off them? That might be part of your experience measures. Other things you can do. What does doctor want to see you again? Yeah, absolutely. So that happens all the time. See more, sorry. Yeah. Vitamin or mineral. Yep. Sorry, I'm just reading these things now. Yeah, and I know some people will say, oh no, they only you need to come and see me once. It's that thing I keep saying, is would it be better for the patient to book them in for that other time again? So that's a simple one. Staying in contact with people over time to get them coming back. Maybe you've got a new product or service that's come out, and we need to think about, I'd call it marketing to them. So, well, again, this is going to do them good to get them back here. So, what are your top 3? So thinking of this all the time, just thinking about, what are 3 things that I can do to promote people coming back to me? Or it could be buying another product from me. Again, I'd go out and go, hey, if you're I don't know, in my head at the moment is you're selling protein shakes, and that's what people are buying from you, and you go out to them and go, hey, we've got protein bars now, or other something like that. Again, to think them. Often the second sale, what we call the psychology of the second sale, can produce more money than the first sale, by the way. And you see that a bit when you buy a car. They're making good money out of cars at the moment, but selling you all those add-ons, when you go and see the person who says, do you want the paint protection and all that stuff, is where they'll make a 66% margin out of that. They'll make more money out of that than the car. Well, they were until COVID hit. So all of those things. What's the top three for you? Just think of them, talk to people, put them in place to get people coming back. But the health plan is the really important thing there. Should they be coming for a follow-up? If they haven't booked in, do you have a system? So this is where we talk about, when I was asking about the measurement as well, does your industry system allow for reminders? Does it have automatic SMSs or emails or whatever that you can put in place to make happen? Stay in contact with them, offer other products and services to them would be the thing there. Could be run VIP nights. Even GPs could have a VIP night, some sort of night. You got to think years ago, this is how you make profit. I actually grew up in Newport in the area of Pittwater, and my mother always told me that our pharmacist, Mr. Cohen, was arrested for operating on a Sunday and selling goods other than pharmaceutical goods. So the world changes as time moves forward. Because he needed to make some money. He couldn't make enough money out of just selling the pharmaceutical goods and not opening up. So top three things that you can put in there. Next session, the standout practice. So what we're talking about in the next one is taking the purpose and putting into patients. How do you stand out from the crowd? How does one physio stand out from the next physio? One GP from the other GP, one podiatrist from the other. I'll tell you now, a lot of that comes down to you. Like in any industry, there's the personal relationships that get built up, or the people. Well, everyone in the business, the person on the front counter is an exceptionally important person in that business. Director of first impressions, and typically director of last impressions in there. So next time we're looking at that, how do you stand out from the crowd? That's where I'm going to say as well, there's the straight quantitative side of measurement and the quantitative side of prems and proms, and then there's the qualitative part of that as well, particularly focusing on the qualitative part of their experience in there that we'll be looking at. So that's it from me for today. Run out of breath today. Gosh, I love that stuff. That is the driver. When we plan businesses, we come back to those 5 drivers, and everything in the business gets planned around that. Looking after your staff increases margin. Painting walls increases, because staff like it better, increases margin. If you haven't read Dr. Paddy Lun's book, The Happiness Centered Business, I'd go and grab it and read that. Dentist in the Gold Coast, and how he changed his business and made it one where he wanted to go to, his staff wanted to go to, and patients wanted to go to. Delivering Happiness by Tony Shea, the late Tony Shea, CEO of Zappos Shoes, the biggest shoe retailer, online shoe retailer, probably biggest shoe retailer in the world. It's a great business, a great one about purpose and what they were trying to do as well. That's it for today. So here's the questions for you. 3 lessons. Stop and think. What are my 3 lessons? What did I get? What did I learn? What did I get reminded of? What was a BFO? Blinding flash of the obvious. And the lessons are only useful if you have 3 actions. What are you going to do? Gina, promote the points of difference, and that's what we're going to be talking about next time. Human side is just so important. Celebrate wins, yeah, love it. Questions for today, you can always, like I said, contact me, marcus@marcuscrowick.com, really easy. If you type in Marcus Crowick, likely you'll come up with me.
Great. Thank you very much, Marcus. That was another fantastic session. I really appreciate all the practical tips and working through those numbers. Personally, I thought that was really effective. So Thank you again for spending your time with us, and thank you all as well for sharing your lunch break with us and your interaction via the polls. So the session has been recorded and it will become available in our education library within the next day or so. So feel free to rewatch that or share it with a colleague who may have missed out. I have also posted in the chat there a link to our online forms. If you do have any questions outside of the sessions, feel free to access that form, pop them in. I then provide this to Marcus and he actually then will record a video response and I'll send these the link to the video response out. So say if we get 5 questions from you after today, Marcus will answer those in one video and I'll be sure to email that out to anyone who has registered. So yes, at any stage you can fill out that form. You'll see now in Slido that I have launched the evaluation survey. I've also posted the link again in the chat. If you could please fill this out, we do really appreciate any feedback you can provide us. This is the first time that PHN is running this series with Marcus, so we do really value any feedback. And we use this feedback to inform the subsequent sessions. So as well, if you'd like a certificate of attendance, I will need you to fill out that evaluation survey so I can capture that. So thanks again for joining us. Our next session, so number 4 of 5, is on Wednesday the 18th of May, and this session will be in the evening. I'll also send out any worksheets that are relevant to this session leading up to that. So if there isn't anything else, Marcus, or no final questions, we might leave it there.
Thanks, Charles. Just a reminder that next webinar is the 18th of May, and the next 2 we're going to evening, so 6:30 till 8, so they're an hour and a half. So we've got a bit more time so I won't run out of breath and you can discuss it. Next big day for me personally, June 23rd, is a thing I call Growth Club up in the Hunter Valley, full day event, planning the business and looking at finances and things like that. If you tell them tell Casey you're from PHN, we'll give you a special discount on that. Or you want to get married, tell me about that, because I'm a marriage celebrant. I'm running some winter specials on getting married as well. Some people play golf, I'm married people. Thanks, guys. Lovely to see you again. Please reach out to me. That's what I'm here for. Okay.
Thanks, Marcus. It was lovely.
See you later.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your afternoon.